Thank you. Hello, hello, good morning, and welcome to our webinar. And I am super pleased to welcome Lainey and Ram. Ram? No, Sam. What am
Damn.
I talking about? Damn! So this is Marco Scanu with Visa Business Plans, and we'll give maybe attendees maybe 1 or 2 minutes. So, Lainey and Sam, how are things in Atlanta, Georgia?
Cold, cold, cold. We don't like it. The
Oh,
Southerners we don't like it when it's cold. I know in Miami it's
how,
not cold, but it's been cold here.
how cold is it today?
So actually today it was like 30 something this morning. It's supposed to be 60 this weekend, and then maybe a high of 30 on Sunday and a low of 16, which for us Southerners, that's brutal. For anyone that's listening that's in the north, please don't laugh at us, but it is very cold. It is cold for us.
Well, Miami, anything in the 50s is freezing.
I
So,
know. Like my sister in California, when it rains, like two drops, the whole city shuts down. But it's good.
no,
We still have some beautiful fall leaves here, so that's pretty.
I'm trying to
Ram,
decide what my new persona is as Ram and how I should answer that
Ram
question. I
road.
think the Ram would not be deterred by the cold weather.
Okay, glad to hear, Ram. Thank you. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. We have here hold on 1 second, a brief PowerPoint that we're going to be sharing with the attendees today. And I'm super excited to have this webinar today. Let me just go and share my screen and let's get started here. Let's start the slideshow. So again, welcome to our webinar, Learn from Current Investor Visa Trends, Insights that can guide your strategy. So let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Marco Scanu. I am the founder, as I like to say, the orchestra conductor of Visa Business Plans. I have been an entrepreneur for more than 35 years, so I know what it means to launch, grow, and scale businesses and succeed in business, but mainly fail in business. That's how you learn in business. Anyway, I my background is in finance. I went to college here in the States, then went to Italy, got my MBA, came back and went to Michigan State, close to where Sam was born in Ann Arbor. So Michigan State and University of Michigan, you know how it goes there. Anyway, I migrated to the US back in 2009 under an O1 visa and entrepreneurship. And then voila, I founded Visa Business Plans in 2009. And since then, we have done around 9,000 immigration business plans, in addition to other business plans that we write outside of the world of immigration, business plan for clients who need a flight plan for their companies, or they need to raise capital, they need an SBA loan. We do that. And then we also provide business coaching, and we have a separate company that provides bookkeeping that we call profit keeping. Why? Because we keep an eye on profits, which is the only thing that counts at the end of the day. And I'm glad, I'm super excited to have Lainey. So, Lainey, why don't you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Laine Posel. I'm the managing partner at Schwartz Posel Immigration Law Group. This is a firm started by my father back in, gosh, I think 1996. I joined the practice. I was in DC for several years doing employment litigation at Morgan Lewis and Bacchius, which is now just Morgan
Wow.
Lewis. And then I joined here in 2004. We practice exclusively immigration law, family, corporate, humanitarian. We are all aspects, big companies, small companies, you name it. I went to the University of Texas for any Longhorns out there, and then school at the University of Georgia. And so welcome, everyone.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Sam that I called Ram today. So go ahead, Sam.
Well, and you're right, Marco. The Ram persona works for Michigan versus Michigan State too.
I know.
I am originally from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and if Laney's putting in a plug, I'll say go blue. the schools are playing each other, although we just lost our coach, so we'll see how that goes. But
Oh
I
man.
think we're here to talk about immigration today, which is probably my favorite topic if football's second. And I think it's interesting since you said, Marco, that you opened Visa Business Plans in 2009. I feel like we've been working with you on business plans primarily for E2 visas, which I know we're going to talk about today, but also L1s and some
Exactly.
EB5 stuff really since about that time. So I
Yeah.
think we've kind of grown together in that realm, and I know we're going to talk about it today, but instead of spending time on my bio, which you can see there, I would say, it really has been an interesting evolution of the importance of the business plan in what we do in immigration and investment-based filings in particular, again, which is our topic for today. You really, in my estimation now, cannot succeed on a regular basis without a business plan. And I think I'm excited to explain how that works and some of the specifics and the nuts and bolts of it. And very proud to be working at Schwartz Posel with Laine, and I worked with her dad before she came, and looking forward to the rest of our time today. And thanks to everybody for joining.
Well, thank you, ladies. Thank you, Sam. I want to, before I forget, important disclaimer: I am not an immigration lawyer. I do not pretend to be an immigration lawyer. What we have at Visa Business Plan is a practical experience, right? As I like to say, we work with Laine and Sam and an immigration lawyer. You guys are the medical doctors. We're like the nurse who has a lot of experience and has seen thousands of patients. And we're here to point out and say, hey, doctor, I think that this patient may have this issue because we've seen like 30 patients with the same symptoms. So you might want to look into it. That's the role that we play. But at the end of the day, we're here to help attorneys win cases and get their, clients get their visas approved. That's the only thing that counts. As I tell my team every single day. So anyway, here's the agenda for today. We're going to be covering the first point is, do I need a business plan? And this will be more of a conversation. Then current trends in immigration and USCIS versus consular processing and so on. Then denials, right? What to do next when you get that, denial. Then we're going to be talking about practical case studies. We're going to be talking about three case studies. That's something that we always, our audience always looks forward to. And then we're going to be opening the floor for questions and answers. So here we go. Let's see. So Laine and Sam, the $1 million question, do I need a business plan?
Yes. Easy answer. We can move on.
Oh,
No,
that's music
so
to my ears. Okay.
and Marco did not pay us to be on this or to
No.
say how great he is, but Sam and Marco, if I can say, putting both of what you guys said together, we've worked with Marco and his group for a very, very long time. And what is amazing is we are just one law firm, right? We have 5 attorneys and we see lots of different visas, and we've done a lot of different things over the years. But ultimately, Marco's team does have the breadth of experience from a million different consulates, a million different attorneys doing things a million different ways. So it's a two-way street. Marco can identify that there is something wrong with this patient per se, and we are here to fix it. But we also can go back to Marco and say, hey, what's going on in Argentina? I need to have a business plan. What's going on down there? What are you seeing also? So it is a two-way benefit. So do I need a business plan? Does it make sense? The answer is yes. They want to see it. In my mind, I've been doing this 25 years. Immigration officers have checklists right next to their desk. It's kind of like a sticky note. Do they have this? Do they have that? Is the passport there? Are they in status? And a business plan for an e-visa, in my mind, is a must. Now, there may be some exceptions that Sam can, allude to, but for the most part, if you are a startup business, do not file that E without a business plan. Now, the type of business plan is changing perhaps. Business plans have been in the past 13, 20, 25. I mean, I've had some clients hand me 30 something page business plans that have so much information in there, market trends, who they are, staffing, financial projections, all sorts of stuff. I think in today's world of, I kind of say the adult ADHD generation of everyone having no more than 2 seconds to concentrate on anything, and the officers being so overworked and overstaffed, or not overstaffed, sorry, understaffed and overworked, they don't have time to read it and they don't have time to sort through it. So Mark and I have spoken about, maybe a 3-page business plan is better, maybe a 4-page business plan or something that is smaller. Some attorneys say, okay, let's file with a small business plan. But I'm going to have my clients still bring the 20, 30 page, whatever it is, business plan to the interview if it's with a consulate, which we'll talk about later, just in case the officer asks more questions. But there is no doubt in my mind that you should not be filing an e-visa, whether at the consulate or with USAS, especially as a startup business without a business plan. And for us, we do that in addition to a company letter. So the company letter will set out all of the requirements of the e-visa, who we are, what our staffing plans going to be, irrevocably committed funds, source of funds. So our support letter, again, trying to keep that to 2 to 3 pages if you can. Highlight the most important, put headers, bold it, source of funds, bold, bullet points, everything that you can. I always say to make immigration filings kindergarten filings, but summarize your business plan, even if it's only 4 or 5 pages, and put your business plan in there. So Sam, that's startup businesses. That's clear because there's nothing there yet to show. But what about if my client is buying an existing established business? They're about to buy into a hotel that already exists.
Yeah, thanks, Laine. And I can't resist the opportunity for a callback, the comedy term back to the medical doctor reference. Marco, I think that's great about all the experience that y'all get, but sometimes I feel like I'm the on-call resident that's getting calls 24/7 and working 100 hours a week. But anyway, I digress. So Lainey, on to your segue. Thank you for that. I think there's definitely instances where you buy an established business that you want a business plan. Often I work with smaller to mid-sized businesses that are looking to set up maybe a chain of businesses, whether they're franchises or retail or restaurants or something like that. So maybe what they've done is they've purchased one existing business, but what Marco and his team can do is they can explain, look, this is the first location out of a planned chain of additional locations. And we're going to talk about one of those cases when we get to our case studies later on in our presentation today. It's really important when it comes to talking about marginality and some of the other legal requirements for an E2 that you can explain how this business will grow. And that's not just endemic to a startup business. Even an existing business has the potential to grow and may need to grow in order to support or continue to support an e-visa. And I think that's a good segue to the next bullet point that's on there, which is that sometimes you've got an existing business that's going to make a change. Often I'll have a client that's got a U.S. holding company that looks to acquire different operating businesses. And that would be another time where if, for example, we're filing an amended petition or prior to making this change, the client's going to go outside the U.S. and go to the post and looks to get a new visa, then we will include a business plan there when there's an existing business. I think just to kind of bring it full circle, the instance where you would not necessarily need a business plan is when you already have a registered company and you've got an existing employee of that registered company. I don't know how pertinent that is for today's conversation. I think the overarching theme is that in just about every scenario I can think of, especially the 3 that are there on the screen, you're going to need a business plan. And like Lainey said, Marco and his team have become very nimble with that. They can provide a shorter business plan if the post has a page limitation, which we're going to talk about today, or they can provide a longer business plan, or they can do both. And I think all of that is just of the absolute utmost importance to best serve our clients.
Wonderful. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. That was great. And I want to talk about, on our end, some kinds of clients go, okay, yeah, do I really need a business plan? But do I need to hire you guys to write a business plan? I have an MBA, so of course I can write my business plan. Or the flavor of the month, which is, why should I hire you? I can ask ChatGPT to do my whole business plan. And look, this is the thing. Look, we've having done around 9,000 cases. The interesting thing is that we keep track of not only every single case we work on, but I attend at least 8 conferences, immigration conferences per year, and I'm constant in communication with immigration lawyers, not only nationwide but worldwide, and just learning about new trends and so on. And what happens is, because I also have an MBA, the main challenge is do you understand the audience, as Laine was saying, and I agree 1,000%. It's about not only keeping in mind that these officers don't have time, they have a very short time, attention span. Here's the other thing. Let's assume that most of them are not business people. Okay. Sorry about that. So what am I doing here? Okay, wait. Okay, here we go. Okay. So they're not business people. So Laine, it's funny. I tell clients and lawyers, we don't write business plans. We write children's books.
Yeah,
I mean,
kindergarten. See?
exactly. So the test is, we have an internal test. If my team cannot explain in 30 seconds in their own language what the client's business is, it means they don't fully understand it. So if we don't fully understand it, how are we going to be able to convey that clearly and convincingly? We have to persuade an officer with whom we will never be speaking with, right? So we really need to understand: are we dealing with a consular officer? Are we dealing with an immigration officer or a CP officer? In the border between the U.S. and Canada, it's 3 different profiles, but they share the fact that they have no time, short attention span, but not only that, they know what they're looking for. So basically, the thought process is, give me what I need to make a decision. That's it. So we actually believe in short business plans, and as Sam was saying, we actually, for Madrid, for finance in Madrid, we've been doing 3-page business plans. I actually love it. Why? Because you don't need more. Of course, it's not going to have the level of detail that a 15 or 20-page business plan, but look, it gives you the substance for Canada and and Germany and France and Italy. We do 5 to 8 page business plans, and I always say, remember, guys, the Gettysburg Address, it had 272 words, but it has been one of the shortest but most powerful speeches. So do you need thousands and thousands of words and 30, 40, 50 pages? Forget it. Nobody's going to read that. So it's all about the audience, right? But not only that, it's about what's relevant. This is what I tell clients with MBAs. Look, when I say, hi, I can write my own E2 business. Okay, do you know what marginality is and the interpretation of marginality depending on the consular post or the USCIS? That's something that, talking about ChatGPT, how does ChatGPT work? It gathers information online. But guess what? The new trends, what happened last week at the US Consulate in Toronto, is something that we in the immigration world, can learn about. Is that available in the internet? No, it's not. So it's about including what's relevant, right, for the specific visa category, for the specific audience, again, consular officer, immigration officer, or CBP officer. So time constraints, and again, children's books. That's what we write.
Hey, Marco, before you segue onto something else, I can't resist the opportunity to make a joke. I'm sure this is going to be to Laine's chagrin, but her dad and I would sometimes joke that, we've got some cases that are still pending that were filed right after the Gettysburg Address. So maybe that might be a reason to choose consular versus USCIS. And I know we'll get to that later. Sorry for the interruption.
Exactly. So again, bottom line is, it's all about the audience and understanding the audience, something that I have been really obsessed about for years. understanding how consular officers think, how immigration lawyers think. That's another one, because as I jokingly say, if I ask 100 immigration lawyers what a need to business plan should look like, I get 100 different answers, and maybe 101 because an attorney has two different views on what they should look like. So it's about customizing the plan to the specifics of the case, and so many specifics. It's tailoring the business plan to the specifics and avoiding the copy and paste and 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 vague type of business plans. Okay. So I wanted to quickly talk about what's relevant for, what goes into a startup business plan. It's, as I said, it's a must, because you have to persuade the officer that, this business plan is credible, it's realistic, the person behind it has the credibility to make it happen, right? So it's about a persuasive narrative, but at the same time, numbers that make sense. One of the biggest reasons I see behind denials and RFEs is I look at business plans that clients wrote, that another company wrote, and I see pie in the sky numbers. No, I mean that can really, make an officer go, wait a minute, I don't believe in these numbers, so why should I believe in this whole business plan? So startup businesses, yes. For when someone buys an established business, right? The approach that we use is, look, let's see what the business that you're buying is. How does it look? Is it a profitable business? Sometimes people buy a business that is losing money, that is already marginal. So we look into, okay, what is the business doing now? What did you buy? And again, let's make a credible business plan. Or changes to an existing business. Sometimes, just like 2 weeks ago, for example, we delivered a business plan for someone who had invested in a painting franchise. They, things didn't go as expected. They're expanding into the real estate investment space. So really explaining what happened to the business and why they're making the change. And again, all in the context of who is the audience. So Sam and Laine,
Yeah.
interesting commitment of funds,
Thanks,
skin in the
Marco.
game.
I'll
Yes.
So
take the lead on this one. And I'll just say that when it comes to commitment of funds, it segues pretty well into the trends that we're seeing. And sorry, Lainey, I think I jumped the gun on this, but I'll take it and we'll flip-flop on it.
Okay.
The commitment of funds issue has more to do, in our recent experience, with cases that are filed at posts as opposed to USCIS. And it kind of goes into the bottom topic that you see on the slide. If the $1 million question is, do I need a business plan? Then maybe the $500,000 question is, do I file this case with USCIS or do I file it at the post? And so when it comes to commitment of funds, I think Lainey, feel free to jump in, but Toronto and London in particular, over the past 12 months or so, have really had issues with this in cases that in years prior never seemed to be a problem whatsoever about irrevocability or commitment of funds. In other words, they're expecting that all of the money that the investor has invested, whether it's a startup business in particular, or maybe even another type of scenario, franchise, or even potentially the acquisition of an existing business,
mhm,
that the money has been spent, not just committed to be spent, not just planned to be spent in a business plan, but actually spent. And that seems to go above and beyond the requirements that are in the Foreign Affairs Manual, in the FAM. And it really, again, goes back to this choice of, are we going to file this case at a consular post? If so, which one? Is this something we need to keep in mind? Or are we going to file this at USCIS? And although the law is the same or similar between the regulations and the INA and the FAM, maybe there are different trends that we are seeing. Sorry for jumping the gun on it, Lainey, but I
No,
figured
it's
that
good.
that kind of gets us started in this conversation about trends, because it really is specific to the post, and specificity of the post goes into the decision of USCIS versus at the post, and that's kind of what we deal with like you guys were talking about, having the experience either with us as the law firm, as the doctor, so to speak, or with Marco and his firm as the nurse, as he mentioned.
Yeah, so what I would say is that I tell my clients, and this goes for a lot of immigration, not just E2, but sometimes what we have to do to get a case approved is not reality of what a business would be. Would anyone ever purchase a business for $150,000 and use $149,000 and leave $1 in the bank to start their business? Never in a million years. If so, you're probably a really bad business person, right? Nobody is going to come to the United States with no money in the bank anymore. And we used to be able to show, okay, and I'm just going to use easy numbers. $100,000 has been spent. $100,000 invested. $40,000 we've used on some products or some machines or some computers, and now we've got the rest sitting here because we have to show that we can cover salaries. We have to show that we can, and that was okay for decades and decades and decades. And now it seems like, and Sam pointed out Toronto and London because that's where we do most of them. Um, they pretty much want to see your $100,000 was invested. Okay, show me that your $100,000 has been used. So you're going to have this, conversation with your clients, which is this first bullet point. Must I spend all of my money before I even get a visa? Like that's ridiculous. And what am I going to spend it on? I'm a startup business. I need computers. Now, obviously, there are times that people, you've got to have the machinery before. I think it was 2020 or 2021, the FAM was actually changed that says you don't have to have a business space. You don't have to be able to show that you have
2021 in August. They
in
call me
August.
an
Thank you.
immigration law nerd. So August 2021.
Okay, so but I still tell my clients, okay, so legally you don't have to have an office space. But number one, I do think it goes towards the officer thinking, is this real? Is this a real business? If you already have an office space, but that's somewhere to spend money. And then I'll tell them, pay your first month's rent, your security deposit, and maybe you want to prepay another month's rent, right? Some people don't need to use all of the money. So I tell people, hey, your investment may be 150,000, but then you're going to have another, again, making up numbers, $60,000 cash on hand that you may not show that you're investing in here just to then have after because you need cash to start your business, but you don't get to leave that cash anymore because the officer wants it all spent. Now, going towards kind of where you're filing, we do see less of that at USCIS than we do at the Post. The Post seem to have some kind of checklist that says, have they spent all their money? And so, again, we're getting very creative with some people on what am I spending my money on? If I've already bought the two machines I need and, I've paid my rent, can you do some kind of marketing? What about computers? Maybe there's an office vehicle that you can, watching IRS regulations that you can, use for that. Maybe you can pay somebody a salary, even though you're not in the United States. Maybe you can go ahead and hire somebody to start. You've got to be creative and you have to be able to explain to your clients that I know this isn't really with reality. Try to have that conversation about filing perm labor certifications, right? But it's that same kind of conversation. This isn't always with reality. But be creative with your clients on what they can spend because the officers don't seem to care, in my opinion, as much as what it's spent on because it's not really up to them. Like, oh, do you really need that machine? They just want to see the money spent and they want a receipt and they want you to be able to track it and they want you to be able to circle. Here is, $21,000 paid for 3 months rent. They're not going to question in my mind, why'd you pay 3 months rent? You paid it, you used it, it's for the business. So let's go now kind of to two best practices. Number one, check each post website. I don't care if you filed one in Madrid yesterday, check Madrid today, because as we all know, things are changing in rapid fire. There's no way that all of us can keep up with every post and every change. So start with their website. Number two, call Marco. Hey, we need a business plan. What is happening in Argentina? What is happening in Frankfurt? Ask your fellow immigration attorneys, ask on business listservs, find out from your post before you even start to create your case. Our bullet point better to reduce or cram? right? Toronto, I think, is 50 pages. Do we take a 10-page business plan and put four little squares on one page so that 4 pages of our business plan are on one page and hope somebody can read it? Is it better to do that? Is it better to remove some pages? So you really need to know what you're working with, not only page limits, but also trends, so that you know
Mhm.
in Madrid, they don't care about 25 pages of invoices to show existing business. Maybe you give one, maybe you give none. Payroll records, maybe you give one page so you can use more for other things. So, best practices, I mean, at this day and age, you just got to talk to people. And
And
then,
Lainey,
like,
I would just say on that, if you've got invoices that are really generic that maybe we know the post is not going to be very concerned with, I might put four of those on one page, but then I would make sure that the business plan is dedicated one page to one page and the support letter one page to one page and so forth.
that's right. And remember, your client can show up at the interview with a stack of documents if they want. Here's our 12 months invoices, our bank records, whatever. But you got to think strategically of what you're filing, because that's what they're going to look at first. Two quick trends, just kind of, again, we're talking London and Canada. Canada seems to answer very quickly right now. Some people are
Mhm.
saying 2 weeks, 5 weeks. Um, but they're responding generally with a request for evidence. We want this, we want that. And people are freaking out. You give them that, but then the interviews seem to be going okay in Canada.
Mhm.
London is silent. You show up, and they seem to be a disaster right now. Now, the biggest thing that I think we have to alert everyone to, if you are not aware, is there's no more kind of forum shopping. You don't get to decide where to go. I've
Mhm.
lost track of all these proclamations and all these things, but you now can only go to your country of last residence, country of nationality, citizenship. You don't get to say, oh, I'm in Europe, I want to go to Frankfurt because that was the one everyone loved to go to. You don't get to go to Bern. You go to London if you're a British citizen. So you are kind of now stuck with whatever the trend is of your consular post.
I would
So
just
that
add that
means
the only exception to that is if you're a British citizen that resides in Switzerland, ostensibly you could still go to Bern in a situation like that. But generally speaking, especially if it's somebody who is inside the United States or who only resides in his own country, then that's 100% correct. And that's, I think, akin to what we've been talking about as far as checking each and every day, not necessarily just the Post website, but the entire State Department's website as well.
Correct.
now
Spot on.
US, oh, sorry, Marco, go ahead.
No, no, no. Go ahead. I said spot
Okay, so
on. Right.
USC versus consular. For the first 20 something years of my practice, e-visas were done at consular post, right? It was their baby. It's what they know the best. They know better than USCIS. And
Mhm.
it was almost undoubtedly that I would say to someone, even if they're physically here in the US right now on a visitor visa, an F1, whatever, I would undoubtedly say, you need to go home. Why? They know better, they know more. They understand all this more. And they're the ones that issue your visa. If you file with USCIS and you need to travel or want
Mhm.
to travel, you are going to have to lodge that application all over again at the consular post. They do not care that you have an approval notice in their hand. They may look at it and smile, they may not even look at it. So to me, it was like you lodge it here with USCIS, who may or may not know as much about e-visas. And then, even if you get an approval, you're now going home for a holiday thinking, oh, I'm just going to give, and you have to start again. You have to wait in the queue with the 50 pages, with whatever they want to look at. So, in my mind, it's still generally preferable to go to a post just because if you want to travel. But if you have a client that says, I could care less, that I don't have no plans for the next 5 years to leave the United States or whatever, then obviously talk to them about USCIS. We are not having a horrible time at USCIS.
Mhm.
We are having some RFEs, but in the ones we've had have not been horrible. But just they need to understand that if they do want to travel, then they are going to have to lodge their application again. However, going ways and pros and cons again, you may be from a country that you go to get your visa, and all of a sudden we put a travel ban on your country that you had no idea 5 minutes before that it was going to be there. So just talk to your clients. I'm not so strict on them having to go to the consulate now because I understand people are scared to leave the United States. So
I
Sam,
just
I don't
want,
know if you have anything else to add to that.
well, I just want to throw out one thing. I know we're a little over time on the slide. I think where I got off to the wrong foot was that I was supposed to mention when it comes to commitment of funds, another factor that you might consider in discussing with your client, USCIS First Council Processing, is are these funds going to be in escrow? How is the post going to deal with that if that's the case, as far as irrevocability or the expenditure of those funds? And again, I think it really gets back to what are your client's goals? How do you best serve them? And then you go through the pros and cons that I think we listed here below. And then also, just because I'm not good enough technologically to change it, somebody had asked in the Q&A about whether or not a business plan needs to be prepared by a CPA in Mexico. And I went on the website just to triple check in case it had changed. That is not required, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't want somebody with experience like Marco and his team preparing the business plan. And again, it just goes back to each and every time. I mean, literally the minute before you submit your package to the post, make sure that you're checking it.
Exactly. And to your point about Mexico, what we're doing for years is not only Mexico, but Colombia, Honduras, and Singapore and Pakistan. So what we do is we write the business plan and we have an independent CPA review the financial projection and issue a letter. There has never been an issue because the problem with having a CPA prepare a business plan is, are they familiar with the regs? Are they familiar with no? And then they're going to charge, an arm I mean, and a leg for a business plan, with the signature of a CPA. So that's the solution that we found years ago, and to date there has never been an issue with that letter. Anyway, I want to quickly talk about commitment of funds. They again from the business plan perspective. Again, we're the nurse, we're not the medical doctors. So what we look at is here's the standard. When I'm looking at the business plan, I want to make sure that the client's business is ready to open its doors tomorrow. Like I'm ready to conduct business. And ideally, of course, as long as the attorney agrees on or even suggests, in some cases, depending on the case, um, you know, it could help if the business is already operating. The company has already hired someone. That's up to the lawyers to decide. But the bare minimum is, as other clients, I want to see that you're ready. You're going to this interview saying, look, all I need is the visa. Get me the visa. I'm ready to rock and roll tomorrow, right? Ready to operate. And again, you guys talk about the importance of understanding your consular post. That's I've heard in several of the ALE conferences that I attend, each consul is like its own kingdom. So you have to understand what the king wants to see in those E2 filings. And I just wanted to use a quick example of how, a few months ago we did a business plan in two versions. It was two applicants, one filing in Germany, 5-page business plan, and then the one for the USCIS with more details, about 20 pages. So two applicants, two different versions, two different business plan sizes. So it's again just to underline the importance of you got to understand your consular post. So let's talk about denials. Thoughts, Laine
Yeah.
and Sam.
Yeah. So denials, they happen. They happen a lot. They happen a lot at post. They happen a lot every day at immigration. So I think the most important thing, obviously, if it's USCIS, you've got the denial in the hand, and they are generally pretty good at, it may be wrong, but they are generally pretty good at explaining what the denial was. But you come back from, your client comes back from their interview at the post, you have got to grill your client.
Oh yeah.
Um, what questions? What was the officer asking? What happened? What path were they going down? Like you have to try to get your client to remember each and every single question because you're not going to get an explanation from the officer. You can email them all you want, and let me tell you what you're going to get. Nothing. Okay. Nobody's going to really tell you why it was denied. So it is going to be up to your client to tell you kind of the questioning, the line of questioning, so you can try to discern what happened. And then you have to decide what to do about that. So Sam, you want to talk about kind of what to do once your client has given you half information that they can kind of remember?
Oh, that never happens, Lainey. I don't know what you're talking about. I think, the first thing is, especially when you're dealing with posts in different time zones. I mean, Lainey will know this about me. I'm better with somewhere in Asia because I'm probably still up at 11 p.m. when they have their interview. But at any rate, I mean, I generally tell them send a voice memo to yourself or voice to text an email to yourself so that you can keep everything fresh in your memory. And then still, you're only going to be getting it secondhand. And I think, I was typing a response to somebody live right now, and I'll get back to that in a second to the person that asked about the RFE. Um, it, it- this goes into choosing whether you're filing at the post or whether you're filing with USCIS, because if you feel like your client is not going to be well prepared to be nimble on their feet and provide that information, and or you're working with a difficult post, then that might not have been the best strategy. Now, on the other hand, maybe the person needed to travel or they didn't have a visa to the US, and you had no choice. So I think, Lainey, once you get that information to the best that you possibly can, now you've got to decide what to do with it. Does that mean that this person now might be better served trying with USCIS? Well, be careful about their intent if they come to the US with another visa and then try to file it as a change of status. And I think really the most important bullet point that's on here is that third one at the bottom. And Lainey, I know that this is something I've seen you do in practice. You're not going to have a different outcome, most likely, if you just refile the same thing. And so maybe what you can do is, at this point, if you had not already involved Marco, you could reach out to Marco. You could improve upon or add a business plan, or you could try to incorporate the feedback that your client was able to provide. Generally speaking, I think once you get through the riffraff and the misremembering and the counseling that we all do kind of as our side job as immigration attorneys, we can try to deduce from what the line of questioning was about what the weakness is in the case. It's always better if they don't refuse it under 214B. If they actually give us a substantive refusal, I would call it about a particular point in the FAM, like break out that worksheet they use in Toronto, for example, and check off an aspect that you didn't meet. But in the event that it's a 214B, you're going to have to try, maybe through trial and error, figuring out what you need to do that's different.
So one thing that I see for denials, and this is, specifically to the business plan, is the person can't really speak to the business plan. Or like Marco was saying, the numbers are so off, and because a CPA did it, or my brother's MBA friend did it, so it all made, and the person was just like, okay, great, this seems right, but they can't even speak to it, right? So if that's the case, and if you are going to change something, you're going to change projections, you need to explain, because you got to watch out for fraud, right? And so I like to get ahead. Some attorneys are like, I don't want to bring up the last time, I'm just filing a fresh one. That's not how I practice. I like to say, my client appeared on this day and this day. It was denied. We want to tell you basically why your denial was wrong. And I do this with USCIS as well. In fact, I just got an approval yesterday of a TN, which has nothing to do with this, but they denied it and they were just flat out wrong. But I went in and the first page said, let me tell you why you guys were wrong, and let me try to re-explain. And it was approved premium processing without issue. So yeah, you need to go back, and this is really, really when Marco's team, again, if they were involved at the beginning, they can help to revise it, to explain it in a different way. And if they weren't involved, then get them involved now to say, here's the aspect and let's hone in on it. But just refiling what you've got and hoping for a different officer, don't bother.
Exactly. And that way we do a lot of that, either, of course, updated business plans that we wrote, or maybe your client writes a decent business plan but needs work on some sections. We can also work on those sections, right? Maybe, most cases, the numbers. I mean, the narrative is fine, but then the numbers have nothing to do with the narrative. Or again, they're pie in the sky numbers that we go, come on, this is not going to work. So what is our approach to denials? Because we're contacted a lot by either clients or law firms. Hey, we got this denial. We got this RFE. What are your thoughts? And we come in and we want to understand, why was it denied, right? Where was it filed? It's key, as Laine was saying. Look, it's key to understand whether, again, we keep track of all the cases we work on, and each U.S. consulate, the trends and the things they're looking for example, in Buenos Aires. They're big industry, also funds, super big, right? We London, as you guys said, was a lot of etude for London, so we know the type of things that they're looking for. So understanding where was it filed, and we do like to review and brainstorm with a lawyer or law firm, the petition and the nine notice, and then of course set a strategy and answer the question, what can we improve or do better or different this time? Okay.
Marco, if you and your group can answer what London is looking for, please let me know. If somebody could tell us what London is actually looking for, I don't know what's happened to that post, but
Well, they don't even know what they're looking for. So,
I
Laine,
think
you,
I
you
think
heard
that's the
that. I heard
problem.
Marco offering to explain and do source of funds analysis. And I was thinking that hats off to the nurses on that one, man. The doctor can take a break. That's okay.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, of course. Look, the good thing is that I attend a lot of conferences, and one big tip, and shout out to the local regional ALA chapters. The Rome District chapter, it's a great chapter. We attend that conference at least once a year. Just came back from the Latin American and Caribbean chapter. Great group. You boots on the ground, they know what's going on in different news conferences. Same with the APAC, Asian Pacific chapter of ALA. Those are great resources. Great resources. Anyway, case studies. So time to talk about was a joint case. This is a case I worked on together, a Portuguese national, $50,000 investment. It was approved, a residential and commercial cleaning services company. What did we work on? Again, we're big time about credible and realistic numbers. Some of you might be wondering, okay, how do you make sure that the numbers make sense? Well, remember, I am a numbers guy and my background's in finance. So it's all about answering a key question. Where did the numbers come from? When we write a business plan, we're thinking ahead. We're thinking, okay, if there is an RFP, this is how we're going to defend our numbers, saying with consider processing. So we look at industry benchmarks, like a company of this size, what type of revenues, is a company of this type bringing. Same with the cost of structure. What is the, what type of staff do they need? What is the net profit margin for this type of business? So every single line item in the profit and loss, we're ready to defend that number because that's the way it should be done. But then when it comes to how do you guys strategize this? Sam, what do you want to share about this specific case?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, Marco, especially when you put it up there with those bullet points. This was a case that was a bit of an uphill fight. What you don't have on there is that the company had not yet hired any employees at the time that we filed, and that it was a dual South African and Portuguese national who had to travel back to South Africa, and we had to get the post to accept this case for filing for a Portuguese national. So I think really what we had here as a benefit was a good balance or a check and balance, I would say, where Marco helped make sure that these numbers were realistic. And then I did some, I hate to sound like I'm tooting my horn on it, but some counseling about, how this person could address questions at the consulate as it pertained to the substantiality of the investment. I will point out that she did have another $40,000 that she had committed to invest in a
Definitely.
promissory note, although the funds hadn't been transferred yet. And the possibility, and I made reference to this earlier, about hoping to one day create her own franchise out of this business. But the stage at which this visa was issued was very, very early. And I like the way you describe it, Marco. I mean, it was a team effort, and it really was a great success story for this particular client and, for the collaboration between our firm and yours.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
And
So,
one quick thing, Marco, that to
sure.
point out, like a lot of people come with business plans that show that their first year operating costs are $200,000 and their investment's $100,000. Well, you got to watch out for those numbers. You as an attorney or whoever's doing this can't just take the numbers and say, okay, these look fine, or not, or I shouldn't say it. Don't even look at the numbers, assuming, oh, that's the CPA's job or whatever. You have to look because that's the first thing the consulate's going to say. You can't even cover your costs. How are you gonna do this?
Exactly.
So
Yeah, great point, which is a great segue into case number two. We didn't work on this case together, right, guys? But I wanted to point out the importance of looking at the numbers. So we were contacted by a law firm who, they had a client who filed in Argentina with a $400,000 investment in a real operating business. The company had been in business for 1 year, three full-time employees, right? I looked at the denial and the business plan that was prepared by another company. I said, look, in my view, this is what happens. I mean, and the officer said, oh, marginality. I said, look, in my view, what they really meant, what the office really meant is, look, I look at the financials of the company. The company had lost money previous year, $10,000. So the business plan was projecting for a small coffee shop that sales would grow from 200,000 to $1 million in 1 year, and the
A lot of
profits
coffee.
would go from minus 10,000 to $200,000 in profits. How can you defend and justify that? So even if the business plan looked, oh, these numbers look great, they have to make sense. How do you convince an officer that this money losing operation has been doing business for 1 year? You have to explain in the business plan how you're going to grow sales by five from 200,000 to $1 million and go from minus 10 in profits to $200,000. So basically, we redid the numbers of the business plan because the client didn't want to pay for the full, editing of the plan. And we made sure that we use, realistic and credible numbers, and voila, the E2 they filed again and it was approved. So it's about storytelling and putting yourself in the shoes of the office reviewing this. That's the numbers, that's the story, and the transition in the numbers make sense.
Marco,
Okay,
I'll just
so
quickly interject there. I know we're
sure.
short on time, but it kind of melds what Lainey said and what you said together. I'm not necessarily, and this might be different per practitioner, and maybe you have a different opinion about it too, but I'm not necessarily deterred by a company, even with a properly prepared business plan, projecting a loss, a net
Yeah,
loss in the first year or even the first couple of years. That's not necessarily a death knell to me about marginality. Everything that you said, of course, is accurate, that the numbers need to be accurate. But just for those practitioners out there, I don't know that you've got a fatal flaw in a case if the company won't be profitable. There's other ways to prove marginality.
exactly. And, perfect example, when we do a business plan for someone, developing a 20-story building, of course the company will lose money in the first 2 years. We look at financial viability. How will this company sustain itself? That becomes the question. So I agree with you. Yeah, company would be losing money for years. That it has to make sense, but then how will it survive? Case number three, this was 100% your case. So we didn't do the business plan, but we want to learn from you. What give us more details about this
Thanks.
case?
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, this one gets back to the irrevocability issue or commitment of funds or however Toronto has been and hopefully is not still, but has been explaining this issue. We had good success with this case right when there were a lot of denials coming out of this post where this person had invested $100,000, which was, somewhat borderline anyway, and had only spent $30,000 on a franchise fee. But what the person had done was, it gets back to something you said earlier, Marco, about being, ready to rock and roll. I mean, there's a real and operating requirement for an E2 as well. And this company had already committed funds to FF&E for the build out of the space on this lease. And maybe more importantly, had placed an order for about $65,000 worth of specific equipment that was sold by the franchisor, that the payment was going to come due soon after the appointment for the visa, and the funds were available in the bank. So this was an example of a pretty sophisticated client who knew what he was doing. And again, counseling this client to be able to explain irrevocability, even if the funds had not actually been spent, that they were committed to having been spent. And it's a pretty good success story. It's a Ziggy's coffee franchise, which is based out west and is coming here toward Atlanta, but it's a drive-through operation. It does not have a lot of employees, but the particular client was able to use his own skills and some work from the franchisor to put together a business plan that was good enough. And then again, what we did was we took care to make sure that the commitment of funds was addressed.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you. So we're opening the floor for a Q&A. So in the meantime, you guys can see here if you want to reach out to Laine and Sam, you have the QR code there, the email, phone number, email address, the smoke signals you can also use to reach out to them if you want to. Same here for the Visa Business Plans and my team. And I want to align that I have a team that I train and I hold very high standards. And basically, our philosophy is we want to do it right the first time. So let me go to the questions. Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, wait, I think that I
I have them
accidentally.
up, Marco, in the interest of time.
Okay, oh yes, go ahead.
I'd answered a couple of them already, but Lainey, maybe let me read this one to you. How about the business plan and profitability requirements to renew the visa for the first time?
So it depends. I mean, I think this actually goes into the second question as well, but if you're going back to the embassy or back to USAS and everything's the same, you're doing exactly what you told me you were going to be doing. It's the correct business. You said, I don't hold somebody to it. If the business plan said you were going to hire 2 people or 4 people and you ended up with 3, or you hired 3 and it said 2, they don't normally, I mean, I haven't seen them take your old business plan and what you're filing with your renewal and say, well, you didn't do this exact thing. They're looking again, are you meeting the essence and the terms of an e-visa? So I don't point out and say, hey, the business plan said we are going to hire 5 people and we only got to 4, but we promised we're going to hire 1 more. Don't worry. I really don't. I just present this is what we have. Therefore, we've met marginality because we have 4 employees. And so I just kind of present the forward kind of where we're at right now, where we're going. But you may need a business plan in your renewal. There are times that you may need it because something is different, and I'm not going to talk about that you're doing something completely different, but you're kind of going a little bit in a different way. You may want a small business plan for your renewal to kind of explain what it was and where you're going. I think Sam already spoke to the profitability. No, they're not looking for profits. I always say, hey, Google has losses and Apple has losses. Like, it's okay, but you just have to still show you can pay your employees and that you've got employees and all of that. I think that goes to the second question, which is what happens if I need to change my business?
Yeah,
So
gee, thanks, lady. Thanks for leaving me the easier question. Although I
yeah,
guess the person addressed it to me.
they
So
did address it. So Sam, your client's gonna buy a motel. You filed with, London, a motel. And now they come to you and tell you one of 2 things. Sam, I want to change my business. I want to now invest in a restaurant. Or Sam, for the last 2 years, guess what I've been doing? I bought a restaurant. Where's your
Oh,
motel?
yeah.
Oh, I never did my motel. That I'm gonna
lovely.
leave that to
Well, I
you.
mean, I could very easily talk slowly and get saved by the bell on this,
Yeah.
but I would make a quick joke and say, your dad once told me when I started working with him, if the case was easy, the client wouldn't need a lawyer. So I guess those are real world examples of that. But the short answer in the interest of time is, I mean, this is an instance where you're going to have to explain what happened. You might have a failure to maintain status issue. You're going to need to be prepared to leave the United States and get a new visa,
Mhm.
if not file an amended petition with USCIS. And a business plan would almost certainly be required to explain what it is that the company has pivoted to, and then certainly some legal explanations about how that person did or did not maintain their status if you are filing this onshore with USCIS.
Correct. Great points. And that's exactly the type of thing that we address in a business plan for either a change of, a need to renewal or a change of circumstances like, hey, I sold or even sold a motel and I now I'm operating a restaurant. So the first question is, have you met the requirements of the law, and show me, job creation, show me either profits or, financial viability, right? That you can continue to sustain this operation. And always I need to underline that we always do this under the coordination and full communication with immigration lawyers. Why? As I said before, if I ask 100 immigration lawyers how we should approach a businessman, I get 100 different answers. So there's a question here for me. It says, Marco, based on the conferences you attend and the volume of cases you see, what immigration trends and patterns should attorneys and clients be paying attention to right now? So I would say that, by the way, it's 1 o'clock. If you have to leave, yeah, we understand, and we'll stay here, maybe a couple more minutes. So it's interesting, in general, the bar is higher, and I think that we can agree that applies to every single area of immigration, right? And we haven't even talked about deportation, but that's a different type of headache. But the higher bar and really paying attention to details. Here, reviews about details, and again, as we said before, understanding your consumer post. One trend in Canada we've been seeing, which is great for us, as a company, that we didn't see this before. Even large companies with multi-million-dollar investments, they get a request. Hey, I want to see a business plan. I don't care if you're investing in $10 million. We recently did a business plan. It was a pretty big company. They invested almost 15 million dollars in a huge business, and they still wanted to see a business plan. So that's kind of a trend that we're seeing. Cases that would not get a request for a business plan before, again, in Canada, now they're requesting, hey, I wanna see a business plan. Any specific, Sam and Laine, trend that you're seeing in any specific consumer post that you didn't see before? You already spoke about London and also Canada, but any other trend that you may want to point out?
I don't think I have anything to add besides the ones. I would just say the details, like you said, are so important. And kindergarten it. Bullet point, highlight, circle, star, asterisk, point them to what you want to
Exactly.
see. Marco, there's a question here that I wanted to speak to. It's very quickly about, can my E2 spouse gets work permission? Can they be part of my business? I get that question all the time.
Oh,
Don't know
yes.
where it went.
I answered it so you can see it in answered,
Oh,
but go ahead.
okay. So what I basically say is, yeah, of course your spouse can, but watch marginality, because the whole question is this business just enough to support you, your family? So if it's just you and your spouse working in this business, I think you're going to lose on marginality. So if you have 7 employees and your spouse is one, that's totally fine. But just you and your spouse being your business, I think you're going to lose on marginality.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's going to tell clients, look, your business plan shows going to be your wife, your daughter, your dog, and your cat. No, that will not look good.
I
So
agree.
yeah, okay, great. So it's 1:03. So thank you, Sam and Laine. It was great having you guys here today. And I want to thank you especially because everything that I have learned and my team has learned has been thanks to your patience over the years, answering our questions. And that's why we have 2 ears and one mouth. We ask questions and we learn. Because when I started, I didn't know anything about immigration. In fact, the first time I saw a business plan for immigration, I said, look, this business plan is a piece of garbage. This is not the business plan. Then I realized, oh, it's all about the audience. It's about the visa category. And I got the message. So thank you again. And again, here's the QR code. If you want to reach out to them or to us, we're here to help and, help you win cases. Thank you. Happy
Thank you,
holidays.
Marco.
Thank you.
Happy
You
holidays,
too.
everyone.
Happy
Bye bye.
holidays. Bye bye.
Bye.